narrative here for Bitcoin at that conference too about the government's involvement in Bitcoin and whether or not that's a good thing or not. And I think that there's a debate to be had about whether or not the government really should be involved in this, and should the United States have a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Do we want the government involved? I think, this is not how this all started, right? 17 years ago. I mean, it was kind of a tool outside of the state. And so what I think is what's going on between gold and Bitcoin, I think everyone should have a little bit of both, but gold's outperformance to me suggests that states are getting more powerful, right? I mean, we're seeing what the Trump administration's doing, seizing resources in Venezuela, probably seizing resources in Greenland. We're seeing what Russia's doing in the Ukraine, what China's likely to do in Taiwan. I think gold is reinstituting itself as a store of value asset because states are getting stronger. Bitcoin is kind of anti-state. And so from that perspective, I think 2025 was a year where governments got more powerful. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It doesn't matter. It's reality. And so I think that was really a big part of the outperformance we're seeing. Governments are taking resources. Governments are nationalizing mines. Governments are recognizing that in order to build out AI and infrastructure and a variety of other things, they need critical materials, and they're going to be more powerful in seizing them. But it's a reminder that governments can take what they want when they want it. And so having Bitcoin self-custodied outside the system and having outside money is necessary for all of us, because we don't know at what point the U.S. government may come in and decide to take whatever. They've taken gold before, they've taken other things before, and so having Bitcoin stored on cold storage outside the system, having gold bars outside the system, I think needs to be an increasing part of everybody's portfolio allocation.
I 100. Hell yeah. I 100% agree with Craig. And one of the troubling things about 2025 was we saw a trend. Really, this has never happened before in Bitcoin's history. Earlier on, what would happen with Bitcoin, I like to eat the mic. It's just, dude, I'm a broadcaster. This is like what I do. I like to eat the mic. But anyways, a very troubling trend, because what would happen, what's happened throughout Bitcoin's history is that you would see more and more addresses created, which you could kind of, you could basically come to the conclusion that you're seeing more and more people take self-custody. That trend reversed as soon as the Bitcoin ETF was launched. That is very, very bad. Because fundamentally, the way that things actually change is if millions upon millions upon millions of individuals are actually taking their Bitcoin and taking it to self-custody and becoming sovereign in the process. Like subscribe to Simply Bitcoin for more. But fundamentally, like, Bitcoin is a revolution. It is the separation of money and state. And in 2025, that was forgotten. 2025 was the year of paper Bitcoin summer. It was the year that Bitcoin became institutionalized, for better or for worse. It was the year which, again, maybe you saw it in hindsight, right? But we were cheering. We were super excited, that politicians were at a Bitcoin conference. 2 or 3 years ago, you would only see hardcore Bitcoiners at a Bitcoin conference, and everybody was on the same mission. So I think 2025 was this refresher to go back to the roots of Bitcoin. And the roots of Bitcoin are individuals reclaiming back their financial sovereignty by taking self-custody. It's not buying paper Bitcoin. It's just not, right? That's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Jake, I would love to get your perspective.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's being used by many different people in many different ways. I'm a big proponent of spending your Bitcoin. And if you are living on a Bitcoin standard, and I would dare to say that many people in this room are not on a Bitcoin standard, that's when the true nature of Bitcoin actually reveals itself, when you can actually buy goods and services with Bitcoin. So it's great to cold storage your Bitcoin in a safe, or you get your 12 words in your brain, or whatever it is that you have to do. But if you're spending constantly Bitcoin for value, we're creating more value for Bitcoin in general, getting more Bitcoin in more people's hands across the world, which is the eventual goal. I mean, people say all the time we're in a cult. I mean, we are, kind of. but don't drink the juice.
Wait,
the red
can I get that dollar bill for a second? I just want to show everybody. So like, you know how like they say Bitcoiners are in a cult? There's a fucking pyramid with an eye on the back of this.
All right, so this is the Alex Jones part, or?
No, what do you mean, Alex Jones, bro? There's a pyramid with an eye.
Cue the Tupac music.
Dude, listen, that is cultish as fuck. At least our cult gets richer over time. This is like a nihilistic, we get poorer over time. I'm gonna rip your dollar.
Does anyone have any tape?
I had to do it.
Look, can I just be a little disagreeing here?
Of course.
You're talking about 2025 as if it was a disaster. 2025 offered me the opportunity to acquire about 20% more Bitcoin than I thought I was going to be able to acquire. Secondly, I can't wait for the price to go to 74. I mean, let's do this right now. Secondly, 2025 showed us that the pure Bitcoin hodler is not really a pure Bitcoin hodler. These guys swapped, and went into SBRs, strategic Bitcoin reserve companies, and treasury companies like they were chasing a girl in heat. Okay, there was so much money destroyed in 2025 by the hodler who has been held up. He has been held up from getting his Bitcoin from 2013, his $30 Bitcoin, which is the biggest issue for Bitcoin. It is the disparity, is the disconnect between 90,000, today's price, and the average holding of about 4 million coins, which must come into this market. They must be removed from a $30 hand who has zero incentive to push his 40,000, 100,000 coins. 3 million coins were sold, dude. 1 million coins came out of the hodler, okay? This is bullshit that people are not going to put their Bitcoin back into the market. If you don't put the Bitcoin in the market, you're actually not helping liquidity. And big markets need liquidity. That is the speed by which money moves around between me and you, me and you, me and you. That dollar that you just took from me, it just proved that the proximity for US dollars, having proximity with this distance, it is the most liquid asset on planet Earth. You could not do what you just did with Bitcoin. You could not do what you just did with Bitcoin, which is me and you pass money. And by the way, no one's ever going to trace that dollar.
I don't think you'd give me a Bitcoin if I asked you for it.
No, I couldn't agree with that more. Honestly, 2025 was one of the most disheartening years for myself in Bitcoin. The fact that people are willing to give their Bitcoin for the chance to invest in a company who has zero productive operating revenue. They're literally just holding Bitcoin. Why are you getting greedy in that sense?
Well, there was a tax play.
Well, yeah.
But this was, hey, last year everybody wanted taxes free on Bitcoin. Why do you want something different than they treat crude oil?
But is that the goal of Bitcoin? Is the goal of Bitcoin to have a tax break, or is the goal of Bitcoin to hold it on your own and to opt out of the system?
Well, look.
Wait, hold on. What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
But look, this is a really important question. Okay. I have.
Hold on. Wait.
I have too much Bitcoin to do what you're saying. I cannot self-custody. I own 300 weapons. I brought one to this conference. I did not bring all 300 weapons to the conference. Okay. I don't know anyone that moves 40 or 50 or 100 or 300 million dollars around their pocket. Okay, they don't. This is not practical, guys. Like in order for money to move really fast, I have to have some systems. I personally, it's awesome if the whole system collapses. We are going to be at $30 Bitcoin. We won't have a market. It will be Mad Max. It's not a world that I want to live in. Okay, it's not a world anyone wants to live in. And this is going to be a transition. I have been involved in transitions my whole career. These take much longer than people anticipate, and they make much more progress than people anticipate, but it takes longer.
I want to ask the crowd. So raise your hand if you guys are on the camp of Gary, and then don't raise your hand if you're on the camp of Chantel, and the stage included. Okay. Camp is this. Bitcoin is meant to be used by you taking into self-custody as an individual. Gary's making the case that that's not necessary. People are going to use it in different ways. So
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I would have to say that it absolutely is both. You have to use Bitcoin, but I'm saying that the goal of Bitcoin, to Gary's point, was not necessarily the tax break. The goal of Bitcoin is to use it. What you were mentioning as well is that Bitcoin does not come to its true fruition the way that Satoshi intended if we're not using Bitcoin. You can't have every single thing in self-custody, but what I mean is that the goal overall is to make sure that we're opting out of the system and utilizing it in either a peer-to-peer electronic currency aspect, or we're at least holding majority of it on our own.
but how can you opt out of the system if it's not in self-custody?
You truly don't, though, right? So he has to call Lloyd's of London or whoever to unlock. You know, he has multiple keys, I would imagine, or however it works for him. But you know, that's not true. You know, if the shit really does hit the fan, they're not answering the phone, right? So at what point is it just, you know, are we using Bitcoin as it's intended? Is it a medium of exchange, or are you just going to, you know, or are you going to take on that counterparty risk?
That's the question I have for you guys, right? So do you guys believe that if the only true way to use Bitcoin is by taking self-custody of it completely? Raise your hand if you agree with that.
Like seashells. Seashells used to be used as currency, guys.
And then raise your hand if you agree with Gary, who says there's multiple different ways of using Bitcoin. Okay, it's both.
But I mean, imagine.
One of the nice
Okay,
things
so then-
now with self-custody, though, is that there's collaborative custody. And what you're doing is you're reducing counterparty risk. So
But there's
that
trade-offs.
unlike-
There's trade-offs to that.
Yes, there's absolutely trade-offs, but as we were talking about the other day, the trade-offs come with, so yes, okay, it could be less convenient. However, you can still make sure that, say in a 6102 event, that you...
What does that mean?
So 6102 is essentially when all gold was confiscated.
Well, all
And
gold was
so-
not confiscated. Only 12% of it got confiscated. That's the part y'all don't talk about. Only 12% of all the gold when the confiscation
Yeah, but
actually got confiscated.
FDR made it illegal
We have
for
weapons in this country, man.
Yeah, I
Okay,
get.
that's the cool thing.
But you just told me.
That's the cool thing. That's why that does not happen. But
You just said
12%
you don't want shit to hit the fan, bro.
What's that?
You just said you don't want shit to hit the fan.
I didn't understand.
You just said you don't want shit to hit the fan. And now you said we got guns.
No, I'm just saying that all the gold did not get confiscated. I just want to be clear for the audience. We have an obligation to teach properly.
But hold on.
I learned a lot from owning Bitcoin to say, hey, 6102, which I didn't know, it's cool. 6102 went into place. There was a confiscation of gold, but all the gold did not get confiscated.
But FDR made it illegal for American citizens to own gold, and the reason that the confiscation was so effective was because FDR was able to literally knock on the door of the custodians.
No, the gold was effective. The confiscation was ineffective. They set the price. They fixed the price, man.
He knocked on the door of the banks that hold the majority of the gold on behalf of people.
And now imagine this conference 5 years ago, and we said, you know, we're going to be celebrating the fact that BlackRock, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and the U.S. government are really, you know, the bull case for Bitcoin going up. We would be like, what are we talking about here? That was the narrative last year. That's why Bitcoin's not. I think that's why Bitcoin's not working. Right, you know, to Gary's earlier point, there's a narrative issue, there's a marketing issue with this asset class, right? I think it's being commandeered by Wall Street. And
if you guys don't want Wall Street adopting, you're going to be at $30,000 Bitcoin. Like, I don't understand how you get to 8 billion people without going through a central depository. Why are we meeting in this hotel, in this centralized event? It's so much risk. You and I might die and all the Bitcoin's going to price out. Like, this is really scary. We're centralized right now. Ooh. No, we're centralized because it makes fucking sense, man. We all get together, hang out, drink some coffee. There's not a problem with this. Now, if the Four Seasons goes all freaky, right? Maybe we all die here. Like, we could. There could be some idiot with a bomb in here, okay? I don't want to live in a decentralized world with all my Bitcoin going, let me see if somebody can sell me a TV. Now, let me go find the Bitcoin distributor for TVs. Oh, shit, they don't really offer the best TV. Like you're going to really grind. Like, you really don't want Michael Saylor here? Like, Michael Saylor is offering people like my sister with $300,000 to move from RJ Reynolds stock to SBR and make 11%. That's a cool use of Bitcoin, man. Like how is that wrong?
I think, and this is a Jeff Booth.
Bitcoin's for everyone, good and bad people, right? Good institutions and bad institutions. It's not just for the good people, the morally correct.
One of my favorite quotes from Jeff Booth is, one of the things about Bitcoin is that you have to be okay with even your worst enemy using it. So fundamentally, at the end of the day, right, as you guys could see, we all kind of have different perspectives on the panel, right, in terms of, full sovereignty, collaborative custody, full self-custody, trusting a custodian. And ultimately, what makes Bitcoin beautiful is that it comes down to the individual's decision what they want to do with their Bitcoin. That's the beauty of Bitcoin, right? So, if you get wrecked in a 6102 order, the self-custodian maxis are going to be like, I told you so. If that doesn't happen, the custodian people are going to be like, I told you so too. So at the end of the day, things are going to go how they go out. But the beauty is that each and every single one of you people in the audience right now have the choice. And that's so important, because before, there really wasn't a choice. Like, there really wasn't. You could say, okay, but there was. Like, I could take out cash. Like, yeah, okay. Try taking a bunch of cash and crossing a border. Like, good fucking luck. That's not going to work out too well. Try doing it with gold. That's not going to work out too well. For the first time in human history, you can store millions, billions, trillions of dollars in your mind by memorizing a 12-word seed phrase. And go ahead. Of course.
To me, like, it's cool if no one knows you have the Bitcoin, but once you actually, like, Gary put on to know this. So he kind of has to have maybe self-custody some, but I think it would be smart for him to have some.
So what you bring up is a very, very, very important topic, and it's a very important problem that's being, many entrepreneurs in the space are trying to solve, right? So collaborative custody is one way of doing it. Geographically separating your seeds in a multi-sig, so that even if someone $5 wrench attacks you, I literally can't give it to you if I wanted to. Now there's Anchor Watch that came out that has literally insurance. So yes, it is a problem, right? Because at the end of the day, if you do take self-custody and you are a known figure, someone could show up at your house, not even with a gun, with a wrench, and say, listen, I'm going to hit you in the top of the head if you don't give me your Bitcoin. So listen, there's no perfect solutions to this. Me and Chantal were talking about this the other day. There's just trade-offs. But the important part is that at least there's trade-offs. Because in the previous system, there was no trade-offs. What I consider a bank account is a 2 of 3 multi-sig, where you hold one key, the state holds another key, and the bank holds another key. You're losing in that situation regardless. At least you could be a badass and decide to take self-custody and bury your seed phrase in your backyard or whatever you want to do, right? At least you have the choice to do it. And most importantly, we are all financially privileged in this room because we live in the United States of America, right? Most people do not have that privilege. Most people on planet Earth, especially in the global south, live in countries with massive capital controls and also live in countries that don't have relatively stable fiat currencies. Bitcoin is built for them. For the first time, they can access the global financial markets via Bitcoin without any fear of persecution, fear of censorship, fear of their Bitcoin or of their wealth being stolen. They could take their money with them. That's never happened before in human history. And going back to Craig's point, we fucking forgot that in 2025. That was forgotten. It became the summer of suit coins. It became the summer of ETFs. It became the summer of Bitcoin treasuries. We have to go back to the fundamentals. That's my opinion. I might be wrong, but anyhow, Craig, back to you, bro. You were talking about the early days, or 2 or 3 years ago, how much Bitcoin culture has changed. Why do you think that is?
Number go up, right? I mean, the market cap is bigger now. I think more eyes on it. I also think society is changing, and there was some talk on the earlier panel about financial nihilism and folks feeling left behind, trying to get ahead, and so the gambling culture and prediction markets and crypto and Bitcoin, I think, has become part of that. So I think there's just more eyes on it, more interests, different types of interests are looking at the asset class and trying to figure out what the next 5 years are going to look like. And so, but then I think really with the government getting involved, I know we talked about it last year. Just is this a good thing? I'm still not sure. Is the U.S. government's purchasing of Bitcoin something that we all want as a community? I think we originally, when we all got into this, it was anti-state, and now it is pro-state. So,
Gary, I'm going to end it with you. You say this is a necessity for Bitcoin to reach higher and higher market caps, the involvement of nation states, the involvement of Wall Street.
I never said that.
Okay.
If you're waiting for an SBR in the United States, I think you're going to be waiting a long time. I do not need the United States government buying Bitcoin, but I think you need fidelity involved, or you're not going to get distribution. I think you need every one of these major players. Look, am I good or bad for the Bitcoin community? I came here 5 years ago. I know almost everyone, and I have never seen an industry where a human being with no expertise in this area in 4 to 5 years could come into this space, know almost everyone, build a large position. If you don't want guys like me, it took my brother 3 years after that to come in. He's going to buy 5,000 or 6,000 Bitcoin. Are we bad for the market? If you don't want new buyers in here, you will not have an asset worth anything. You'll trade it when you go to Thailand with some prostitute. But you're not going, and you're going to be tracked and traced, by the way. Okay, I own a company that can track and trace everything you're doing. I mean, absolutely everything. And if you tell me your solution is Zcash and Monero, I will show you how we'll see all the on-ramps and off-ramps. And if the government wants to control your custody of Bitcoin, they're going to control the custody of your Bitcoin. They're going to throw your ass in jail, and they're going to wait you out. Come on, let's be honest, okay? So I would prefer 8 billion people to get Bitcoin, and the price is $1 million for Bitcoin. Because my play is, I'm interested in super, super rich. I'm interested in staying in the 1%, man. That's why I'm here. I want to stay in the 1%. And however I can do that, which is, by the way, how do I do it? I get to 120% allocation. I don't do 5%. This is a great trade, dude. It's great for 120 or 130 or 140%. If I'm wrong, my kids grow up exactly like me. If I'm right, they have a major problem. Major problem, okay? The responsibility level for this opportunity is staggering. Like, I have literally cut every business I have because the opportunity here, this is not going to happen in 20 years, dude. This is going to come and go, and you're going to be like, oh, wow, he was really lucky. And he's really fucking rich, right? This is an opportunity for Joe Schmo to change the trajectory of their family, but also to have influence into the future. That's why I gave Trump 12.8 Bitcoin. Through Bitcoin community. I didn't do it direct. I could have done it direct. I did it through Bitcoin because I wanted to see him, hey, what will we do for you if you guys elect us? And most certainly, I think that's been good. His shenanigans on the tokens, great, whatever. But we have a Congress, we have a Senate, we have a whole policy group of people talking about it. Whether we get there or not is irrelevant. They're doing some good marketing for us. They're talking about Bitcoin all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hodl and Hustle panel. Thank you so much.
They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Yep. Don't wait for them all to come off.
Okay. It's a shame. %. Big round of applause for that amazing panel. I want to thank them for proving my point earlier. This is a community of individuals who have very unique and differing opinions. That's what this is about. Everyone has disagreement. Creative discussion, creative debate is how technologies progress. So that was beautiful to see. We're going to do a coffee break for 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene.
Why do the mics, there we go. Why do the mics not work for me? Before the coffee break, we're going to do a 10-minute coffee break like Dr. Durrell said. But I want everybody to know that we are live streaming finally. We had some technical difficulties earlier, but we are live streaming. You can share that, please, retweet. We're live streaming on YouTube, on X, and on LinkedIn. So everywhere we're Bitcoin Day IO. Bitcoin Day IO. Thank you. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.
is to have a beautiful place.
Fix the money, fix the world. Mic check, mic check. Fix the money, fix the world. All right, let's start heading back to our tables. We're about to start our next section. So if you could gradually begin to trickle back in. We've talked about the history of money, which is obviously gold. Gold has the track record. Now we're going to talk about the future of money, which is obviously Bitcoin. The future of finance, and we're going to hear from CJ, who started one of the first Bitcoin lending protocols, People's Reserve Bank. So if you could gradually begin to trickle back in, we could probably get those doors shut. So we already said, historically, if you ask someone what money is, they show you this. Currently, if you ask someone what money is, they show you this. So we're currently at a transition where the future of money is about to manifest. Bitcoin is the future of money. We are at a transition period. And the question becomes, well, what are you going to do with your Bitcoin? You can't live in your Bitcoin. You can't eat your Bitcoin. But what CJ does is he helps you utilize that capital, that pristine capital known as Bitcoin, to borrow against your Bitcoin to finance purchases, whatever they may be. So I'd like to welcome CJ of People's Bank up to the stage. Give him a nice round of applause.
Test, test, test. Good morning. Is it working here? Everybody can hear me? All right, cool. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year. All right. So, oh man. What a great couple of panels to kick off the event, right? And what a great event to kick off the new year. I want to give a shout out to John Drew and Paul and the entire Bitcoin Day team for putting together this fantastic event for the Bitcoin community. Thank you guys. So, what makes Bitcoin a pristine collateral? Well, it takes the hardness of gold, which enabled the supply of the collateral base to not be expanded ad infinitum to dilute the value of that collateral base, and it upgrades it to absolute digital scarcity, which removes the potential for further dilution. And then it takes the ease and efficiency of treasuries, which enabled quick and cheap one-day settlement, and it updates it so that you have 10-minute block time settlement. You can send billions for the cost of pennies with no counterparty risk. So by taking the best characteristics of gold and fusing them with the best characteristics of treasuries, we end up with this new digital engineered money. And that is what makes Bitcoin the most pristine form of collateral in the entire world. Now, most people, I think, are Bitcoin, we saw it in the panels today, we're still learning, right? We're at the very beginning of this thing. Most people think of Bitcoin as a savings technology or a spending technology. They don't really understand it as a financial layer technology. But Bitcoin truly has the potential to be the equity layer foundation for the future of finance. Now, hey, that sounds cool, CJ, but what the hell does that even mean? And is this going to solve any problems for us? And I think the best way to answer that question is to look at a problem that we have in the world, present a solution, and let the free market decide if there's any value in that solution. So in the next slide, we're going to see President Trump addressing one of the most pressing problems we have here in the United States, which is housing affordability. Let's take a listen what he has to say. Oh, that's me, not President Trump. Oh, there's my beautiful AI picture. What the hell's going on here? That's what you guys were supposed to be looking at. Okay, cool, we got enough of the AI. Okay, let's start the video. Nope. Please, tech guy, press the play button.
Are you still considering a national emergency over housing?
I'm looking at it.
What would that-
I'm looking
what would
at it.
that-
You know, there's two thoughts on housing. You have a lot of people who have housing that because we have such a strong time and such a strong market there, houses are very valuable. It's a big part of their net worth, their house. I don't want to knock those numbers down because I want them to continue to have a big value for the house. At the same time, I want to make it possible for young people out there and other people to buy housing in a way that at conflict. In other words, you create a lot of housing all of a sudden and it drives the housing prices down. So I want to take care of the people that have houses that have a value to the house that they never thought possible, that have sort of made them wealthy and happy, and especially in their later years. Got to be careful with that. I want to keep them up. At the same time, I want to make it possible for people to go buy houses.
Okay, so what President Trump is highlighting here is the truth about the housing crisis, which is that all of the solutions that currently exist are kind of at conflict. And why are they at conflict? Because there's two issues at play. We need to maintain home prices, but we also need to increase home affordability. And the easiest way to increase home affordability is to just let home prices fall, right? But now we get into the housing conundrum, which is a very political thing. Because look at these statistics. Half of the voting homeowners have more than 50% of their wealth in their home equity. And then 90% of the other half of the voting homeowners, they still hold a significant percentage of their wealth in their home equity. So if home prices were to come down significantly, it would be a political catastrophe. We would lose the midterms, we would lose the next presidential election because people would be voting for change. They would be afraid that their net worth is going down, their retirement is disappearing, and their quality of life and standard of living is at risk, and therefore they need to make change. And what this administration is doing is they've presented some solutions, and they are some pretty radical solutions to give you an idea of how serious this problem is. So of course we've heard of the 50-year mortgages, and there's a reason that we heard it and we're not hearing it anymore, and that reason is duration risk. And I want you to remember duration risk because I'm sure you've seen on social media the 30-year mortgage at 6% and then the 50-year mortgage at 6%, and you see that you're starting to save some money there. It makes it more affordable. But what they're ignoring, what those social media influencers don't understand about underwriting, is that when the loan is longer term, there's more duration risk, and therefore you have to pay a higher cost of capital. And we can see this in the difference between the 15-year and the 30-year. At a $500K loan, the 15-year, you're at 5.3%, you're paying $4,200 per month, you pay $259,000 in interest, and then when you upgrade or you extend out to the 30-year fixed, you get a 70 basis point hike, bringing you up to 6%, but look at your monthly payment, it drops. You're saving around just over $1,200 per month, making it more affordable, but you're paying a significant amount more in interest cost. And Trump comes out and says, what about a 50-year mortgage? This is what we need. Hey, the 30-year mortgage worked well. Why not go to the 50? But when you add 20 years of duration risk, you're going to get roughly 94 basis points on top of your rate. Look at the cost. You're only saving $12 per month. You're paying more than double in the interest cost. And by the way, the average amount of time you spend in your home is roughly about 10 years. So because of the way an amortization schedule works, where it's interest heavy in the front, you're building equity in your home at a much slower rate at a 50-year mortgage than you are on a 30. So when you go to move and you want to roll that equity into your next property, the equity isn't there. Again, harming affordability. So the solution is not a solution, which is why we're not hearing it anymore. Next, we move on to the potential ban on institutional investors. And if you define institutional investors as those who own 100 single-family homes or more, those entities only make up 2% of demand in single-family homes. So if you remove that 2% demand, you're not really going to increase affordability. And then if you remove, let's say you reclassify syndicates as a institutional investor, and maybe you only own 10 single-family homes. Yeah, sure, you could drop demand, but now we're right back to the conundrum where those home prices are now falling because the demand has dissipated, and you're going to get that change in vote, and you're going to create that fear within the marketplace. And finally, the most recent solution that's been floated out there is the administration ordering Fannie and Freddie to purchase $200 billion of mortgage-backed securities. This is not free market. This is kind of what Natalie was talking about earlier with this communist banking system. This is a form of yield curve control. And when you buy those mortgage-backed securities, the price goes up, the yield goes down. The goal is to lower the interest rates. But it's not sustainable. There's only $200 billion on their balance sheet, and you're going to have to print money, create more inflation if you want to have sustainable rates through a yield curve control program. So the problem with all of these solutions is that they're based on the traditional system. They're based on the fiat collateral layer, which is absolutely breaking down at the seams. And it's breaking down because since 2020, 80% of dollars in existence have been printed. Let me say that again. 80% of the dollars in circulation have been created since 2020. That is what's breaking down mortgages, bonds, credit markets, insurances, all built on top of a fiat collateral layer where the value is being diminished, where the value is being printed away. Enter Bitcoin, a pristine collateral layer, a layer that cannot be diluted, a layer that is engineered to store value through time and space. And let's just review again quickly what makes it that pristine collateral. Quick, cheap, secure settlement. The engineered money component, absolute digital scarcity with the 21 million supply cap. The halving event and the difficulty adjustment, creating a cost-based price discovery cycle. And then also the ability for the network itself to maintain and regulate itself through the growth and shrinkage of hash rate and difficulty and profitability for miners. So you take these two components, pristine collateral, engineered money, and you piece them together, and it gives us the opportunity to redefine credit. Because what happens when you have a pristine collateral underpinning the system is that you have the Bitcoin equity value layer going up, and then you have the fiat denominated debt burden layer going down. This is an inverse trend. And we can take advantage of this inverse trend to turn duration risk into a duration benefit. And when we do that, that means the duration premium that we saw earlier that you have to pay, it actually turns into a duration discount. And when we take this reality and we say, how can we use Bitcoin not just as a savings technology, not just as a spending technology, but as a financial layer technology? How can we integrate it to solve problems? So today, I'm excited to announce that People's Reserve is officially patent pending on what we call Bitcoin mortgage insurance. And this is a really exciting way of how to integrate Bitcoin into the traditional system to solve problems. So I'm going to compare it to private mortgage insurance, and then you decide if it's a valuable solution or not. So with private mortgage insurance, the borrower benefits are only that you access financing. If you can't put down 20%, you need the PMI, and if you don't pay the PMI, you don't get the money and you can't buy the home. So you only get the benefit of accessing finance. For the lenders, you get decreased risk. Now, they use a third-party insurer, so if you default on the loan, they will recover that loss, which where the risk decrease comes from, but there's no increased yield potential or anything like that. How does that compare to how Bitcoin mortgage insurance works? So, of course, you get access to the financing, but with each BMI payment that you pay in, it actually gets allocated into Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin goes into an escrow account, and that escrow account is 50% owned by the borrower and 50% owned by the lender. What that means is Bitcoin's engineered design and its compounding annual growth rate is working for you, and you can build equity with your PMI payments. In a regular PMI, you're just paying it to get access, you get no benefits. Well, that means as that Bitcoin compounds its growth for you, you have the potential to pay off your loan early. And from the lender side, you get significantly decreased risk because that escrow account, along with the property title, is securing the loan. And because the lender has 50% of the equity of the BMI, they have increased yield potential. Now, let's see how this translates in a chart. With Bitcoin's current 60% CAGR and a BMI product, 500,000 at a 6% rate, you can pay off your debt in 5.1 years. A 30-year debt slave lifetime commitment is now gone in 5.1 years. At a more conservative 30% CAGR, you pay it off in 8.6 years. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the numbers. And I know this is a very heavy chart, but follow along with me here. You can see across the top in the PMI column, BMI columns, you have the traditional PMI, you have the traditional numbers, but you have BMI with Bitcoin at a 30% CAGR, conservative, and then you have BMI at a current 60% CAGR. Well, take a look at what happens, the upfront cash outlay. It's a 5% down payment no matter what, so you gotta put the $25,000 down. The big difference between PMI and BMI, you need to make your initial contribution, and we want that 20% equity level, so it's gonna be a $75,000 contribution. Now, the monthly costs are exactly the same. You're getting $297 in PMI and BMI, and that payment goes directly from PMI to the insurance, and it's paid all the way until you have your 20% equity and you don't have to pay it anymore. Well, that same payment in BMI is getting put into Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin is being held in the escrow account so that it can secure the loan and build equity for you over the life of the loan. And this is where the magic really happens. Look at the time for full loan payoff, right? So the time until insurance payment ends, right above that, PMI, you're gonna pay that for 9.8 years. You're gonna pay that for 10 years. You're getting no benefit, you're paying it for 10 years just to access the financing. With BMI, it's not based on equity. You're gonna contribute all the way until the loan is actually paid off. But look at the time to pay off. With PMI, of course, there is no benefit, so it's a 30-year full term. But with that conservative 30% CAGR, 8.6 years, 60% CAGR, 5.1 years. So even with a conservative CAGR, you will pay off your entire loan and own your home debt-free before you even build 20% equity in a traditional product. That is amazing. And if we can maintain this 60% CAGR, it's in half the time. In half the time, you will literally own your home debt-free. Can someone say housing affordability? Right? Does this not play a big role in what can be done? Now, look at the total contributions. BMI is a little bit more expensive. With PMI, you're around $35,000. Over the 8-year period, you contribute $68,000. Over the 5-year period, you contribute $55,000. But remember, half of that is working for you. It's working for you to secure the loan and lower the interest rate. It's working for you to build equity to pay it off faster. Look at the total interest saved. This is unbelievable. This is where the magic happens. You save nothing in a traditional method because you're paying it in full, all $500-something thousand. But with the 30% CAGR, you're saving $324,000. With 60%, $415,000. That is how you solve for affordability. Revolutionary innovation of pristine collateral into traditional products. You cannot solve the problem from within the system that creates the problem. The administration's current solutions are built on top of that fiat layer. It's going to continue to leak. It's not going to solve the problem. A new equity layer can solve the problem, and now we know that because we've looked at the math. But when we move out of this fiat experiment and we move into the world of sound money, we need to make sure, because we can't just print money anymore, right? We need to make sure that both the lender and the borrower are properly incentivized. So look what happens for the lender, who also has the 50% upside on that escrow account. Because one of the big things in home lending is lenders hate prepayments. Sometimes there's a prepayment penalty. Sometimes you're not even allowed to make prepayments. In this case scenario, the lender is making significant returns because of their portion of the equity. That 6% loan that you wrote over the 30-year period, you would be afraid to get a prepayment traditionally. But with BMI, the 6% turns into over 10% APY. And if we have a 60% CAGR, it turns into a 17% APY. These numbers are absolutely insane. And what we see here is that Bitcoin is the black hole. Bitcoin is going to suck everything into it. We had natural money in gold, and it was pretty good. And we had experimental money with fiat currency. And I think we all know that system's been abused and the problems with it have been exposed. But for the first time in human history, we actually have real money, an engineered money that was strategically designed to leverage the natural laws of economics to empower us, we the people, who are storing our economic time and energy within that asset class. And if we can get people to understand that Bitcoin is not just a saving and a spending technology, it's a financial layer technology. And if we can accelerate its integration into these traditional products, like we saw the insurances, the credit, investment opportunities, all of these things, when they're built on top of Bitcoin, they work for you. They solve problems. Everything else is just an excuse. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.
One more round of applause for CJ making real-world Bitcoin applications. So this next panel, Pattern Noticers, is full of a lot of unique individuals who are unafraid to share their opinions, unafraid of taking criticism and giving criticism. These are some Bitcoin OGs, some free thinkers, and some real thought leaders within the space. So let's give it up for this panel and have some fun.
Thank you.
Two. Paul, thank you.
Testing. Test, does mine work? Mine's not working yet.
No, it's working.
It is? You guys can hear me? All right, you guys ready to have fun? Okay, thank you, John, for letting us host this panel. Conspiracy theorists no more. We have now become pattern recognizers.
Rebrand.
So, that's right. We've already won, you guys. No, but in all seriousness, shout out to CJ, who is a fellow pattern recognizer, who has been recognizing the patterns of failure in fiat and creating fantastic solutions for people who want to buy houses, because we can't live in our Bitcoin, right? So for those of you who are not chronically online, my name is Michelle Weekly. I'm probably best known for running my mouth online and saying things that nobody else wants to say. But I think that that resonates with a lot of people, and the reason that it does is because whether it's a few weeks, a few months, or a few years later, a lot of the things that sound really, really crazy end up becoming true. And that's why we're here today. So I am joined by some of my absolute favorite people in the space, my fellow pattern recognizers, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Carly, you want to start, and we'll go down?
My name's Carly Benson. I have been in the Bitcoin space since, 2017. You guys ever heard of the Bitcoin Conference? Yeah? Oh, come on. No one's heard of the Bitcoin Conference?
The big one. Aren't we at it right now?
I run the Whale Pass program at the Bitcoin Conference. So thank you. Yes. And so, yeah, I don't know how much more we want to do the intros, but quick.
Intro. Okay.
Hi, I'm Chris.
You guys all know Chris. And Paul.
Paul Tarantino. I'm the CEO of Byte Federal. We do Bitcoin ATMs, wallets, and POS systems.
That's right. So, okay. So everybody here is working in Bitcoin and maybe a little more well-known for some of their less hot takes, but I'm going to probe them for their hot takes. Chris, we're going to start with you. So you often end up on macro panels and talk about, numbers and TradFi stuff and trading and all of that. But I would like for you to talk about geoengineering and what is geoengineering? What do we see falling from the skies? What led you to start noticing those patterns, and what have you done about it? Because I think that that's something really important you're doing that people are maybe not aware of.
Yeah, so basically, long story short, I'm a nature advocate, big in conservancy, and as a surfer, fisherman, diver, have just devoted all of my non-financial life outside of being a father and a husband to holistically protecting the environment from human beings. That does not mean there is a such thing as climate change. That does not mean that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. Both of those are false, demonstrably. So, and I, as a historian first and a macro and hedge fund guy second, we actually can start at the patent level, right? Because anything that doesn't occur naturally has to be patented. Why does that matter with geoengineering? And this is pattern recognition. If it were condensation trails, it would not require patents. So anybody who doesn't believe that what they're being sprayed with is toxic as a motherfucker, and you're all morons for not fighting it, then you deserve what they want to do to you. And go ahead and read Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 for what their plans are for you. So those patents began in the 40s. And we can pull one up right now. You want to have fun?
There are patents, you guys.
So this is a smart dust patent. Let me find it. I save all this stuff because I am active in the state. So if anybody wants to look this up, it's U.S. Well, that's subliminal. Hold on. U.S. patent number. Anybody following on? Look it up on Perplexity or Anthropic. Come on, Wes. 11354666 B1. Smart dust and its usage. Do we want to know who owns this patent? Somebody guess? Just anybody guess? One at a time. Well, Bill Gates, that's a good guess.
DOD.
Probably they created it because the ownership and filer of this is Wells Fargo. Now, does Wells Fargo have a smart dust nanoparticle pathogen division at their bank? No, so that means fucking DARPA did it. Period. So I think that was a very robust way to break the seal on anybody who doesn't know what's happening. So in addition to pushing Bitcoin bills, monetary bills in Florida, I somehow got into advising politicians who are 9 out of 10 are complete worthless, grifting communists. Ron DeSantis is mostly not one. And when you convince them with data and samples, Dr. Jane Ruby, Dr. David Martin, Mike Adams, with proof.
Just to clarify for people who maybe this is really new to, they are spraying the skies. You can see that, right? And you're talking about the patents on what they're spraying,
exactly.
And you've been testing some of that, what's
to
coming.
Prove, right, so where's Craig? Oh, he's not even here. What a dick. So anybody a gold bug? And you know a lot about metals. Can they aerosolize themselves? No. Oh, shit. So how does aluminum, selenium, cadmium, strontium get in the air column, water supply, and in the soils? How? If we can prove that that's in it, then how does it do it? We have to then find the vector of attack, which is industrial, non-commercial, because commercial planes don't spray any of this, military craft. And so it was 15, 16 years of fighting this, and then finally we get a geoengineering ban in Florida, only to find out we don't even have our air rights above a certain, it's 2,000 to 200 feet depending on the county. And I should stop, that was a diatribe. So essentially, my only goal, like the money system's actually going to just collapse on itself, and some matrix of commodity money will occur after this fourth turning. I'm not even concerned about money because we have ways to hedge, adapt, augment, and evolve. With this, we're being poisoned at every angle. Water, like fluoride, poison, right? Everything is lower testosterone, mind control, blah, blah, blah. And now they've just quietly upgraded the Verizon network to 7G. That's why it was down twice this week. And no one understands that these towers are direct energy weapons. They have weather control patents going back to the 50s, the hurricane that hit Savannah. There was lawsuits, and there was congressional hearings in the 70s on weather control. So all of this is more in my purview now to fight, because if we keep allowing our natural environment and our children and ourselves to be poisoned, we're not going to be able to raise our consciousness and fight this metaphysically and spiritually. Then it won't even matter that we have Bitcoin.
Right. What's the point in holding lots of Bitcoin or having an immense amount of wealth if you are too sick or poisoned to enjoy your life, right? So these things really, really matter. So I know you're doing a lot of work in that space, and whether people know it or not, it's good.
I'm not looking for any, they already want to kill me anyway. So it's just backing up, giving evidentiary factual data,
Right.
time-stamped and geolocated from, okay, this came from Melbourne, this came from over Tampa, this came from over Orlando, so that those who have legislative power and the monetary influence over that legislative power can, because nobody likes to be poisoned. Even the leftards don't like to be poisoned. So I think we have in Florida, let's call it a little more gravitas to fight this, and I will never stop yelling and screaming until we do what we do.
Thank you.
So if you go to naturalnews.com right now and type in, Mike built an AI that's completely decentralized called Enoch, and you type in chemtrail samples Dr. Jane Ruby, because she collected them in Florida, then you are going to see video evidence of what he found under microscopy, and it is mother effing terrifying. I've been trying to detox this shit out of my blood for 3 years straight, and it's impossible. Yeah, it's not pneumonia. It's an aluminum toxicity primarily, because what happens in your lungs is the fibers that clean out the particulate daily, they get paralyzed. And so the body's response is mucus. Well, then that can lead to fever, headache, and other dysfunctions. So it's the virology is fake, and too bad if you don't already know that.
Yeah.
Contagion is not real. And when you dive into data and science, real evidentiary-backed science that's also means-tested and control-tested, this is very easy to uncover. So the pattern that we all need to recognize is that we've been lied to for arguably 200-plus years, at minimum since 1913 and 1928. Look up why those dates matter, where there was a conversion to allopathic. So I would argue she didn't have pneumonia, because there's no such thing as pneumonia. She had a toxicity expressing itself in symptoms that the mainstream media calls pneumonia. Well, now I have to pull it out from the phone.
We'll find it for you. We'll find it for you after. I think a couple people.
Hold on.
We'll get it to you after this.
We'll get it for you.
Well, there's actually, and you're making a great point, and let me answer this from a couple different angles. So let's just use rough math. 1/3 of the pilots are in on it, get off on it, want population control, depopulation, et cetera. 1/3 of them, their wives and children have been threatened to be killed, and 1/3 of them have no effing idea what they're doing, they're just getting a paycheck. And there was a woman, I forget her name, she's an activist, it's on Prime, it's a documentary on geoengineering. She actually confronted pilots doing it who said exactly that statement. So, and then you're like, well, why does Bill Gates want to poison us? Well, everybody lives in Florida, give or take, except the nice Aussies over there. Welcome the Aussies right there, Paul. Hey, they traveled a long way. How many times have they released toxic geoengineered mosquitoes in our state? Constantly. How could that be for, obviously that's not for good reasons, duh. So we just have to take back our power and understand what is the dynamic of how these pilots are either privately employed or through DOD. And RFK said on camera, we think it's DARPA. Well, no kidding, which is it's basically the worst globalist entity other than the Fed is DARPA. So
Mosquitoes
it's just
and ticks.
Sorry.
Mosquitoes and ticks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Lyme disease is man-made. Yes, exactly.
All right, so they're poisoning us. That's really exciting, right? They're trying to
You know,
make us poor.
I just
Really,
want to
really
add, like,
great.
there's a financial incentive to poisoning us,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're all aware of the overhang of Social Security and Medicare. When COVID came out, it instantly became evident to me and others in the pattern recognition category that this is a great way to solve a lot of the U.S. debt, right? Taper, there you go, taper the Ponzi, right, exactly. I wrote a letter to all my clients at that time, which, you know, infuriated my employer at the time, about this obvious thing that seemed to be a solution if you are wargaming out the potential of a debt collapse in the United States. So these are not just topics that only impact your specific interest in the environment or things like that. These are big macro topics, and this engineering has a financial purpose for the people that are running the world. And being aware of it is your first step to figuring out how do we fight back against this. And so many people are unaware or unbelieving. They can't fathom the evil. And it's just like, you really have to start opening your mind that there's a lot of people that don't want us around.
I'm going to have you say more on that. So in this world full of doom and poison and people getting poorer and poorer, Bitcoiners are full of hope. And Paul, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about why does Bitcoin give us hope and how can we use it as a tool to separate ourselves?
When I discovered this technology and I saw the power, I instantly felt like we had the ability to flip the table on the power structure that currently exists, that wants all of this doom, they want all of this geoengineering and bioengineering to suppress our ability as humans to evolve to a level where we become more powerful than those that are controlling us. So Bitcoin became the financial tool for sovereignty. Once you see that, then it just becomes that one tool in the tool set of all the sovereignty stack that we need as individuals to build. Chris has just talked about, you know, trying to flush this stuff out of his system. Your health and your death are the most important things that will ever happen to you. It's going to start by building sovereign wealth. It then progresses to taking sovereign control of your health. And then how are you going to pass that to your future generations in a way that you not only deliver the finances, but you deliver the knowledge and you deliver the structure, the mission, the message, and that sovereign mindset so that future generations, like the Gen Zs we're going to hear from today, and I'm so proud of you guys for coming, yeah, give them applause. That we now can take ourselves into a position where we're going to flip we flipped the fucking food pyramid, let's flip the human pyramid, right? And that's where I think it is, but you can't do that broke. So you got to start by building your wealth. Or weak, right? You got to start by building your wealth, then you got to build your health, and then you have to build your family's future generations so that we don't lose this to the next 4-year cycle.
That's awesome. All right, I want to go to Carly. So Carly was a little shy in her intro. Carly runs the VIP program for the largest Bitcoin conference probably in the world. But before she did that, she had a whole nother life, and I'm going to let her talk about that and about intentional living is something that she doesn't get to discuss that often. But Carly, I'm going to kick it off by asking you, did Did Bitcoin lead you to pattern recognition, or did pattern recognition lead you to Bitcoin, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this about me, but I quit drinking in 2008. And thank you. Feels like another life ago, just the perfect way to describe it. But for me, I started my pattern recognition, and to me, pattern recognition is really just being willing to question the narrative. I started questioning the narrative about alcohol, and I'm not here to lecture you about alcohol. I'm not here to tell you, if you drink, you're bad. But I am here to tell you that I became a thought leader in the sobriety space because I had a lot of hot takes about alcohol. And it is the only drug in the world that you have to defend yourself for not wanting to take. If someone said, hey, you want to go do some heroin, and you said no, they wouldn't try to convince you otherwise, So I, started speaking up about alcohol. I started blogging. I started coaching people. I was really questioning the narrative. And I had a run in there with money because for the longest time, there have been research studies and all these things that tell you, alcohol is good for you. And if the grapes were organic and all of this stuff. And when you start to follow the money on all of those research studies, it leads back to big alcohol. They were funding a lot of that research. And so now, fast forward 20 years later, it's not so weird to be sober or not drink, and I'm here for it. So I started questioning the narrative about alcohol, and then fast forward, I started dating a professional poker player. Dated him for about 8 years, and I saw these poker players transacting in Bitcoin, betting in Bitcoin, $200,000 on a UFC fight. They settled it in Bitcoin between themselves. And I'm like, what is this Bitcoin stuff? I guess I'm going to buy some just in case it catches on. Okay? So then you fast forward to 2020, which you already alluded to. I lived in a little bubble. I'm like a yogi. I do intentional living. I don't drink alcohol. I don't follow the news. I don't follow politics until 2020. Now, I had no political bias whatsoever. I just flipped on the television and started watching these news conferences. And I'm like, what is going on? This is not tracking for me. And that's when I started really getting into pattern recognition. I started going down all the rabbit holes. And I think because I didn't have a political bias, I was able to, suss out what actually made sense to me. I went down all the rabbit holes, the geoengineering, the food, the pharmaceuticals, kid trafficking, you name it, nightmares for months. And in my mind, I was like, everything leads back to money and power. And that's when I got Bitcoin. I said, holy shit, if you actually can change the money, or at least the incentives around it, because you can't print more Bitcoin, you actually could change a lot of these problems in the world, and you actually could bring some truth to people. And that's when I quit my 15-year business as a consultant and a sobriety coach where I was making great money, and I took the job at the Bitcoin conference because I said, I want to put my talents behind something that is going to educate people, because the only way that we get to hyper-Bitcoinization is through education. And so I was a pattern recognizer first. Then I found Bitcoin, and then I really started to connect the dots. And that's kind of what I always tell people, when they come and they say, well, I want to learn about Bitcoin. I would encourage you to question the narrative. Go look at the Federal Reserve. Go look at the central banks. Go look at how fiat started and when and why and how, and start looking at those patterns, because you got to understand the scam first to really understand Bitcoin. And so it's always interesting to me now that I'm in this space and I see where smart money is going. Gary was talking about this earlier about look at what smart money is doing. The pattern recognition now is watch where the money's going. And people are not selling their houses and putting all of their money into Bitcoin for no reason. And so now I'm on a level of I'm looking at the pattern recognition of what is money actually doing? Banks are coming to the table. Institutions coming to the table. The treasury companies, yes, it used to be anti-state, but if we truly believe in hyper-Bitcoinization, then that does mean that it's going to branch out everywhere. So
it is so important to understand the problems that you're solving. I think a lot of people come to Bitcoin twice in waves or you know, I also got into Bitcoin in 2017. A lot of people get into Bitcoin and they think they understand Bitcoin. And then you go down all these other rabbit holes, you start recognizing all of these different patterns, and you come to a new level of understanding Bitcoin. And I think most of us have had a similar journey where once you go past that turning point, nothing else matters, right? So I got into Bitcoin in 2017, primarily from a technology and financial perspective, and I used it to escape a past life. But 2020 was also a turning point for me. I had been living abroad, I had been working in China, I was here in Florida, but I still had all of these contacts in China, and I saw the COVID scams starting over there, and I was on WeChat talking to people who were literally getting locked in their houses, and I said to all of my family and friends, shout out to my parents who are here, and I said, this is coming here. They're gonna lock us down. And people, I have never been looked at. I get looked at like a crazy person a lot, right? But this was a new level, you guys. Very early on, I said, this is coming here. And every single person said, absolutely no way. This is the United States of America. And then they locked down Italy. And then they locked down Canada. And then it came here. And so there are just so many patterns here, right? And as you start to understand them, you start to see how very connected they all are. And one of the challenges that I like to put forth now is I challenge myself to never ever say that could never happen here. And if we apply that financially and you look around the world at all of the fiat currency crises, if you look at what's happened in Cyprus, Lebanon, Nigeria, so many countries have lost complete control of their fiat currencies. And you cannot say that it cannot happen here, because it can, and it probably will. So, thank you.
Paul?
You want to borrow?
There we go. You guys hear me?
No. We got a few more
Next
minutes.
contestant.
I want everybody's hottest take.
Just from a pure grand super cycle, Kondratiev wave, and then fourth turning, and then human technological cycles as well as spiritual cycles, we are in the end of fiat. This is ending now.
Correct.
You could mathematically say it already ended when QE started, right? Because that's essentially where the modality of fake gold back, then not gold back, all of that is a construct, but effectively the money became not money when they started quantitative easing. Globally, they've really not even stopped it. So whether it's 5 or 10, this is going to change. It never has not changed. And the pattern is always the same. You have commodity-backed money, then you dilute that commodity-backed money, and then you convert it to fiat, and then you debt bomb. And then the liabilities overwhelm the supply, and everybody loses. It doesn't matter if it's the British Empire, it's Rome, it's Mongolia. This is a human thing, and it's spread across technically like 2 to 4 generations, which make up the 4 turnings. So your optionality is limited any frickin' way. And this is where it's like the easiest kind of exit ramp onto I get to protect my assets in one of maybe 5 things. And in order of importance, it's Bitcoin, gold, silver, land with water rights. And that's it.
Ammo.
And then bullets.
The thing that you said in there that I don't think people focus on enough is the demo. Right? Like that.
The demolition of the currency?
Yeah, the demolition of the entire system.
Yeah, you want to say more
right?
about that?
I mean, that has been throughout history. What the pattern that Chris just described has been throughout history, how they impoverish humanity so that they can install the next system. We all talk about the next system that's coming, right? We talk about the surveillance state. We talk about Palantir, X, the super apps, everything that's coming, the 15-minute cities, et cetera. It's all been written. It's all out there. Everybody can read it. How do they get you to take that up is through impoverishment, right? So So you have to have a bridge. You have to have, like people talk about the Bitcoin life raft. You have to have this mechanism so that you can transport yourself through that gauntlet into the future. And that is more than Bitcoin, right? That is that's complete looking at yourself and saying, am I healthy enough? Am I wealthy enough? Do I have food resilience? Do I have a community around me that's going to support me? I worry so much about individuals that are going to be in a city living paycheck to paycheck and don't have that exit pre-planned because they're not connecting these dots. Their options are closing down on them so quickly. And I think this speaks to what they were talking about this morning, which is like, why are we so compelled to tell the Bitcoin story and to bring, it's not a cult. Like, Bitcoiners are passionate about humanity. We want everybody to get to that other side, or as many of us as possible. And if we don't help each other, you're one little person on this island of massive state control and destruction. Because they're giants that are restructuring the world right now, as we're all watching in real time, and we're the ants that are trying not to get stepped on. Right? So you need to, as an ant, look up, look at the future, and figure out where are you going to be? Where's your money going to be? How are you going to feed yourself? Is that food going to elevate you? Is that food your best healthcare system? Is that food going to detox you? Because then you're going to start to be more intuitive. You're going to start to see the future more clearly. And you'll have the capability to think about this future from a clear mind because you know you have a plan, because you know you have that life raft. So I think all of these things are sort of left out of our Bitcoin conversation at large. And Bitcoin is just a center of that hub, and it really affects everything around you, and you need to start using it in a way that can empower you in all those different other spokes that are so important to not only our survival, but our ability to evolve and become better at being human.
I want to comment on that because, we're all talking about how we've recognized patterns and then it naturally led us to Bitcoin. There are a lot of people who find Bitcoin and then it has the reverse. And what ends up happening is you start going down the pattern recognition of the money system because your entry point was Bitcoin. And then you're like, well, if they were lying to us about this, then what else are they lying to us about? And then you start going down these tracks of, health and wellness, and, Bitcoiners become carnivores and they opt out of the medical system, and, it becomes this domino effect. So it can go either way. And I think the overarching idea that I would say is, whether you begin to recognize the patterns first and it leads you to Bitcoin, or you find Bitcoin and it leads you to the patterns, it's very important that you figure out the patterns.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, it's okay to be crazy, right? I'm on the internet all day being crazy. I've got some of my favorite fellow crazy people here. But
Michelle, we're not crazy. You're right.
That's right.
You're always going to sound crazy.
I don't have a subjective bone in my body. You know that.
I know.
I'm always a skeptic and a bear and a contrarian. So in order for me to even tell you, they already have the CBDC nodes ready, and you're the fucking node. I know that factually. They can roll out the Empire credits instantaneously already. That apparatus has permeated the entire planet, right? So this is not crazy.
So I don't think you're crazy.
I'm just distinguishing from a nomenclature that really isn't applicable to people who are trying to ascend.
You're always going to sound crazy to people who don't do research.
That's true.
And it's hard for a lot of people to even fathom the technology that exists.
Already exists.
That's already in our bodies.
Right.
Why is a phone called a cellular phone?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but the reason
you are the cellular network.
Correct.
The reason that I say that is just because I want to encourage everybody who is maybe not as far along in their journey to just keep going, because wherever you are on this spectrum, whether you're brand new or you're 10 years deep into all of the patterns, there will always be people who are not willing to do the research, who are going to call you crazy. And so even if you're not sure about some of the things that we're touching on here, you may feel a little bit crazy just talking about Bitcoin to normies in your life, to people that turn on the legacy media and believe all the propaganda that's being pumped into them. And I think my biggest message is screw them, forget about it. It doesn't matter, right? Like if you're here and you're interested in Bitcoin, keep going because you're correct.
There's two paths. One is a high consciousness warrior poet, and then the other is a Spartan. And those are our optionality here if you'd like your bloodline to continue in harmony. And Paul and I were talking last night, and I'll shut up after this. How peaceful will our deaths be if in our lifetime we end the succubus that is the central banking system? So I'll leave it with that.
I was just going to say, too, you know, someone mentioned it earlier. I think it might have been Cedric. He said, you know, you get online and you see all of these, I guess we'll call it Bitcoin maxis. We don't do crypto, we don't do the other stuff. Part of the reason why you see people who are so passionate about Bitcoin is because they have done the research and they have noticed the patterns and they want to help other people see it. Although I'm not saying it's always the best method, you know, that is why Bitcoiners are so passionate about speaking about it. And that's why we do these conferences and we try to spread the message. And I would say, you know, if you are a pattern recognizer, which I would imagine a lot of you are in this room, the best way to help people around you and in your life is not to preach at them, it's to get them asking questions. Don't assume that the points that you want to make about Bitcoin or the world or the crazy stuff are what's going to land for them. What's going to land for them is where they're at in their journey. So you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, just show people, prove it. Like, I'll tell you guys a little family story because I think it just says exactly what Carly's saying. You know, I've been preaching to my parents about food for God knows how long, and COVID and everything else, right? And it got to the point where it's like, oh God, we have to go to Paul's house again. But you know, as we've gotten older, now we do all the holiday dinners at our house, right? So now they're eating grass-fed beef. They're having homemade sourdough with wheat that's imported, and we're making our own ice cream and desserts, and you know, it's the full Thanksgiving dinner. They eat like pigs, and afterward they go, you know, I feel really good after this meal. It's like, yeah, no shit. That's what I've been fucking telling you for the last 5 years. So,
Backyard chickens are the gateway drug to Bitcoin. All right, so I think we've just got a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Sure.
With the remedy and the elixirs, dude. Yeah, repeat the question. So the question was, well, first let's establish the question's invalid because these toxins and poisons exist and were concocted to do so. But so what you're asking is, oh, okay, that's what you, I got you. So there, So David Icke calls them the global death cult. So we'll just use that to describe they. They have the solutions already. And some of you might know enough about technology to know that there are already med beds. And I'm actually beaming 7 different quantum fields around my biofield now to harden my chi. So if anybody wants to talk about that, we can. We're not going to do it on the stage. But to your point, even though I have that level of consciousness of what I can do to defend and detox myself, these folks have access to technologies that no one really is going to believe exist.
The other thing that I would say to maybe somebody who's more of a normie is, why do we bomb innocent people all over the world? Like, do you really believe that the government doesn't commit atrocities? You know, because if that's the case, then there's no helping that person. But, you know.
Chris?
They've been papering the silver, which is they've been papering the Bitcoin. Eventually, people are going to learn about silver, but then it's going to translate into Bitcoin.
Does anybody know the paper to... So Bitcoin's supply is not fixed, guys. Does anybody know how much more paper there is than the Bitcoin? It's 7 to 1 right now.
Real Bitcoin supply is fixed.
What is real? I mean, I'm being a
Bitcoin
devil's
and
advocate.
self-custody.
Right, and so the ratios in gold and silver for all of Gary's lifetime, where's Gary? I love you, Gary, has been in the hundreds and up to as high as 11 and 1,200%. So while its scarcity is a monstrous feature, don't think these powers that ought not be are not going to weaponize price, which is how you see price distortions in Q4 that don't make any sense, don't match any prior correlations, right? So the paper tail wags the dog, essentially.
And my message is just, if you don't know what any of that means, because I don't, just hold your own Bitcoin in your own self-custody and forget the paper games.
What we're saying when we say they're papering it is, for example, you've got massive institutions, you've got the Michael Saylors, you've got these people, they're doing these massive Bitcoin buys. They're buying them predominantly through Coinbase, and that's not to throw Coinbase under the bus, but there's no mechanism or source of truth for Coinbase to say, we actually bought those Bitcoins. What they're doing is they're buying an IOU. That's what we mean by papering. And the same thing has been done with silver, and it's starting to get to the point where this thing's about to explode. There's not enough silver to back up the need for it, and banks are realizing they're going to have to flip their narrative because they don't have a choice. And eventually, Bitcoin will get to this point where it's about to pop.
Collapse is coming.
Turn off the video, please.
You might have to talk to Chris about that
Hang
afterwards.
on. Repeat your question.
Oh, my question was, how do we prevent these derivative markets from creating this issue? And then how do we also prevent bifurcation?
You don't.
I could go bottoms up, but let's just go macro-prudential. You just have to destroy the central banks and the exchanges. We have to accept that even as Bitcoiners, there is a lop-off effect of our livelihood to go through this transition. The current derivatives number is 4.79 quadrillion. But I would argue it's a combination of awareness and higher consciousness that exists, a understanding that we are not obligated by law to comply with this system, to pay taxes to this system. IRS and the Federal Reserve are not constitutional. They were not ratified by a total vote in Congress, and then the states did not ratify income tax. All of the narrative around that's occurred is complete bullshit. And then You wrote a good book describing the fact that there's been 2 bankruptcies in the Fed, one by FDR, that was probably the most recent, and then technically a technical bankruptcy in 71. So how we have to tackle it is kind of awareness first, legal second, and then rebellion third.
And that's that, folks. We'll talk to you after. And I just want to say Bitcoin is working exactly as it was designed to.
You'll introduce.
Yeah. Bitcoin, life insurance, Jason.
Companies meanwhile. Java.
You're not going to get content like that anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen. Bitcoin Day 2026. Let's give one more round of applause. Chris Sullivan, the man, the myth, the legend. No filter, pure truth. So as an economist, I want to give you a quick takeaway, some economic data that proves the dollar is dying. We've said it a million times. We need the data to prove it. We've all seen the chart of the dollar gradually dying from 1913 to today, and we hear 99%. I'm here to tell you that the actual death of the dollar is more extreme. With economic data, the price of this in 1971 was how much? How much was this in 1971? A little economic trivia. $35. What is the price of this today? Same coin? $4,600. $35 to $4,600. That's over 1,000%. That's over a 99% death of the dollar in 55 years. It's just economic fact. You do not want dollars, you want Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the future of money. We're not in this for the short term. We're not in this for the trade or the flip. This is about ensuring our lives and passing on generational wealth. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jason from Meanwhile to talk to you about Bitcoin life insurance. Let's give a hand for Jason. Sorry.
Test. Can you hear me? Okay. So, this is a logical next conversation because this is all about how does your Bitcoin outlive you? How does your Bitcoin pass on to the next generation? We're all going to die. We have Bitcoin, a lot of us in self-custody. You get hit by a bus tomorrow. Do your loved ones know your private keys, passwords, seed phrases, all the above? Maybe your spouse does, but what if you're both in the car together? Do your kids? Do your other family members? How can you guarantee that this exit of the sovereign economy of the dollar, fiat-based system, Bitcoin, will outlive you, will allow you to pass it on to generations? Well, the answer is Bitcoin life insurance. Everything in life insurance is about passing on assets to your family, to your loved ones. And the beauty of life insurance is that it's all tax-free. The government has created life insurance with all these tax incentives to get you, if you can afford it, to buy life insurance. The assets grow tax-free. You can borrow against a whole life policy tax-free. You can pass on the assets to your family one day completely tax-free. The only problem is that it's all dollar-based, and the rate of inflation is eating away at all your benefits. I've been in crypto since 2013 when I first bought Bitcoin.
I'm married, I have kids. One of the anxieties that you have when you're an early Bitcoiner is if I get hit by a bus, will my wife be able to figure out where all the Bitcoin is, how to use it, how to monetize it? Kids are expensive. Their nursery schools are expensive. She's going to need these assets. And if I get hit by that bus, there's no way. I'm the crypto geek in my family. She is not. She's not going to figure it out. I've created a treasure map, literally a handwritten piece of paper with 45 different steps of what to do, like self-custody Bitcoin monetization for dummies. But even that is not a perfect way to guarantee my Bitcoin outlives me. And so I discovered Bitcoin life insurance in 2024, and it blew my mind. Literally, my jaw hit the floor. I instantly got my own policy. It's basically all the tax advantages of life insurance wrapped around your Bitcoin to guarantee that your Bitcoin will outlive you no matter what. And you're going to leave your family more Bitcoin than you ever had to begin with. Life insurance in general, $100,000 of premium might pay $500,000 in death benefit. How does $100,000 become $500,000? Through yield. Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin in premium might pay 20 Bitcoin in death benefit. How does 10 Bitcoin become 20 Bitcoin? Through yield. You can literally increase the amount of Bitcoin you have through life insurance. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. My company is Meanwhile, and you might recognize some of these names that back us. But essentially, we are a life insurance carrier, just like every other life insurance carrier. We're based in Bermuda, like so many other insurance companies. And the only difference between them and us is that we are fully on the Bitcoin standard, where Bitcoin is our functional currency, where everything we do is in Bitcoin. You go to our website, you click the financials, you'll see that we have our audited, externally audited financials are a table of numbers, assets and liabilities with B's in front of each number, not dollar signs. We measure everything in Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. There's no such thing as a cost basis for us because Bitcoin's our currency. And so in order to understand what Bitcoin life insurance is, where your premiums and death benefit and policy loans are all in Bitcoin, it helps to talk a little bit about traditional life insurance for those who might not be totally familiar. What we offer is a whole life policy. And what that means in the traditional world is you go to a carrier, you say, I want $1 million death benefit policy. They'll say, great, we'll crunch some numbers based on your age, your health, your sex, and they'll dictate to you an amount of premium that you must pay in dollars, either every month or every year. And that premium payment has baked in fees and expenses in it. And it goes in whole life into a mutual fund, an investment account with a guaranteed growth rate of about 4% or so. And that grows over time, and in time, you can borrow from it tax-free, meaning that 4% every year, maybe it's up 30% after a couple decades. You can borrow money out if you need a down payment on a house. Let's say you borrow $100,000 out of your policy. You never have to repay that loan. You don't have to pay the capital gains on that 20 or 30% appreciation because it's life insurance. And your death benefit will just net down from $1 million minus $100,000 to $900,000. That's how traditional life insurance works. We do that in Bitcoin, except what that means is we had to change a couple things around because Bitcoin is a scarce asset with finite supply. So you can't come to us and ask for $1 million policy, or we'd say a 10 Bitcoin policy, because what that would mean is we have to then tell you how much premium you have to pay in Bitcoin. The only problem is we don't know how much Bitcoin anyone has. We can't say, oh, you have to pay 8 Bitcoin in premium, because you might say, what are you talking about? I only have 5 Bitcoin. So instead, you come to us with an amount of Bitcoin that you know you have, and you say, I have this amount of Bitcoin, what do I get for it? I want to use it as premium. Well, we will then crunch numbers based on your age, your health, your sex, and whether you're a smoker, and we'll give you a death benefit ratio that you get relative to the amount of Bitcoin premium that you want to pay. All of our policies are paid over 10 years. It's called a 10-pay. And you pay in equal annual installments. If it's 10 Bitcoin in premium, it's 1 Bitcoin a year for 10 years. If it's 5 Bitcoin in premium, it's 0.5 Bitcoin a year for 10 years, regardless of the price of Bitcoin, because remember, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, so it doesn't matter what the price is doing. You might say, okay, today Bitcoin's at $95,000, so if I pay 1 Bitcoin, it's $95,000 of annual premium. But next year, Bitcoin might be at $200,000, so now my premium just doubled. Yes, in dollar terms, but so did your death benefit. If your death benefit was 20 Bitcoin, then that 20 Bitcoin's dollar value also doubled. stop thinking in dollars for the rest of this talk and really start thinking in Bitcoin. So everything's in Bitcoin. Premiums, loans, death benefit. We never sell. There's no dollarization, realization, indexing to the dollar. Everything is in Bitcoin at our company. And so this is, for example, a 35-year-old healthy non-smoking male approaches us with 10 Bitcoin they want to use as premium. They get 18 Bitcoin in death benefit. The younger and healthier you are, the bigger the death benefit, of course, because you're young, you're healthy, and there's many more years of life expectancy for us to grow your Bitcoin, to get yield in your Bitcoin. The yield we give to every single policyholder, our guarantee is 2% per year, every year in Bitcoin denominated terms. 2%, yeah. But then you have to ask, where the hell does the yield come from? Because that's the downfall of most crypto companies, or just most companies ever in the financial system, is they're going to take your money and multiply it. Well, they're probably going to lose it somehow at some point. BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, Gemini, Genesis, you name it. They've all blown up. And so how do we get yield? Well, we're a highly regulated, very conservative, risk-averse life insurance company. We have to be around for a very long time. Our liabilities are so long dated. I mean, we have 20-year-olds with policies. They're not going to die for 70 years. So we have to be around for generations, centuries. So how do we get yield without blowing up a company, without even risking the potential of a blow-up? We've actually solved a problem for low-cost basis Bitcoiners. Think Bitcoin miners, for example. You've been mining Bitcoin for years. You have a lot of different vintages, prices that you mine your Bitcoin at, $100, $1,000, $20,000. Today, the price of Bitcoin is at $95,000. If you're a miner, your revenues in Bitcoin, your CapEx is in fiat, meaning the electricity costs that you have to pay to run your operations, that's in dollars, not Bitcoin. Rent, where you warehouse all your ASIC machines, that rent payment is in dollars or in fiat, not in Bitcoin. So you get Bitcoin revenue, you have dollar CapEx, so you have to go from Bitcoin to dollars. How do you do that? Well, there's two ways. You either borrow against your machines with your ASICs as collateral. These loans are expensive, they're 10 to 20+%. Or you just sell Bitcoin. It's much easier to sell Bitcoin. The question is then, well, which Bitcoin, if you have all these different vintages, all these different prices, all these different cost bases, which Bitcoin are you going to sell when you have to pay your monthly rent or whatever it might be? Well, obviously, they have to pay capital gains like the rest of us, and so they're not going to sell Bitcoin they mined at $1,000 today, because the capital gains tax on $94,000 of appreciation, north of 20%, is non-economic. Your CFO, your treasurer, is not going to want you to pay that much in taxes. They're going to want you to sell the Bitcoin you mined today, yesterday, last week, last month, closer to today's market price, not the low-cost basis Bitcoin. So what do you do with all that low-cost basis Bitcoin? Well, literally nothing. It sits in your wallet because your CFO and treasurer is not going to allow you to accidentally incur a taxable event. And so it's just sitting there. Well, until the life insurance company in Bitcoin rolled around, where we don't have a cost basis. So we can allow you to swap your low-cost basis Bitcoin with our Bitcoin in the form of a one-year repo or a repurchase agreement. Meaning, miner approaches us, sends us 100 low-cost basis Bitcoin that's pretty useless to them. We send them back 100 Bitcoin. That assumes today's cost basis. That's how a repurchase agreement works. One-year term. We charge them 3.5% upfront. So really, they send us 100 low-cost basis Bitcoin. We send them 96.5 back. That's the 3.5%. That 96.5 assumes today's cost basis. The miner can immediately sell it all for all their CapEx needs. At the end of the year, they can either repay their loan and get their original 96.5 Satoshis back, their low-cost basis Bitcoin back, because this is tax deferral, not tax avoidance, or they could just roll the loan to the next year, and they can keep rolling another 3.5% every year, send in, meanwhile, 3.5 Bitcoin every year for as long as they want. What do we get out of it, meanwhile? Well, we get 3.5% yield with no counterparty or credit risk because this is a fully collateralized loan. Remember, if our counterparty disappears or blows up or doesn't pay back the loan, we have all 100 Bitcoin of theirs, they only have 96.5 of ours. So of the 3.5% yield that we're generating, we give 2% to all of our policyholders, and we keep 1.5% for ourselves. That's how we make money. So this is a no-risk, fully collateralized way that we've solved the problem for low-cost basis Bitcoiners for us to get yield and pass on yield to all of our policyholders. And that's how, for that 35-year-old, 10 Bitcoin in premium pays 18 in death benefit and 8 extra Bitcoin, or an 80% return on his Bitcoin. 2% per year, we amortize out to age 100. So for a 35-year-old, that's 65 years of compound annual growth rate of 2% in Bitcoin-denominated terms. Mind you, it's in Bitcoin terms. Because if the dollar price of Bitcoin goes up over that period of time, then that 2%, which sounds small, is amplified by potentially orders of magnitude in dollar terms. The policy loans are actually a really interesting element of whole life insurance because you can borrow money against your policy. You can borrow up to 90% of the surrender value, so it's like a 90% LTV loan, and you're going to be borrowing Bitcoin. So the way it works is, let's say Bitcoin goes to $1 million one day. Instead of selling Bitcoin at $1 million if you want to cash or you want to diversify or move your Bitcoin into other assets, you're going to incur a huge capital gains tax relative to whatever your cost basis might be. Instead of selling Bitcoin, what you do is you borrow against your life insurance policy. So you log into your account at meanwhile.bm, you see your cash value, you see your available loan amount, which is 90% of the surrender value, and it's in Bitcoin, so you say, oh, I want to borrow 2 Bitcoin. Great, you send us a wallet address. We then screen that wallet, just make sure it's not going to North Korea, and we send you 2 Bitcoin to that wallet. At that point, Meanwhile is largely done, but you want cash. We don't do cash. We don't touch dollars. We're giving you Bitcoin. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to take that Bitcoin to any exchange or broker that you might have a relationship with, and you're going to say, hey, I want to sell 2 Bitcoin. But they're going to stop you before you're allowed to, and they're going to say, where the hell did this Bitcoin come from and what's the cost basis? You'll have a loan document from Meanwhile that says it comes from my regulated whole life insurance policy at the Bermuda-based life insurance company backed by Northwestern Mutual called Meanwhile. And it says right here that the cost basis of these Bitcoin, these are new different Bitcoin from the life insurance company that I borrowed in my policy at a new stepped up cost basis. The cost basis is established on the day I originated the loan. In this case, $1 million a coin. You might have bought Bitcoin at $50,000 a coin many years prior, but you're not using those Bitcoin to borrow. You're getting new different Bitcoin from the life insurance carrier at a new stepped up basis. So you have $1 million coins, 2 of them. You sell at exactly $1 million, limit order on an exchange. Your cost basis equals your sale price. There's no taxable event. There's no Form 1099. You have $2 million cash, you withdraw. Your death benefit was 18 Bitcoin in that example, minus 2 is 16. The interest rate on that loan is 3%. It's a low interest rate loan. But remember, the rest of your portfolio is growing at 2%, so really it's a net 1% delta. And you now have $2 million cash. You never have to repay the loan because it nets out of the death benefit. And you're never at risk of a margin call or a liquidation event because you just borrowed Bitcoin against Bitcoin collateral. You're borrowing from yourself, your loved ones, your family, whoever your beneficiaries are. You're not borrowing from an exchange. You're not borrowing from a lending desk. You're not borrowing from an insurance company. And your net death benefit went from 18 to 16. Remember, your premium is only 10, so you still have 6 more Bitcoin than you ever had to begin with. And you have $2 million cash out of it. This is how you leverage life insurance. This is called infinite banking in Bitcoin using life insurance. And don't forget, there is an inheritance component. This is life insurance after all. You're going to leave your family whatever Bitcoin you have left in your policy after all your loans. You can let that interest rate accrue. It'll never lapse your policy. At 3% on 2 Bitcoin, you can just let it grow and grow and grow, and your net death benefit will be, instead of 16, 15 point something by the time you die, maybe 14 point something, depending on how long you live. And the key for me when I got this policy was the fact that I now know that my wife, all she has to do to get my Bitcoin is not learn about custody and private keys and seed phrases. She just has to file a claim. She reaches out to Meanwhile and says, my husband died, he had a policy, what do I do? And Meanwhile will work with her in a white glove concierge way, hold her hand through the process. She might say, I don't even want Bitcoin, my life is in dollars. Well, upon death, you get a new cost basis, new Bitcoin, And if she doesn't want Bitcoin, meanwhile, we'll help her liquidate that Bitcoin at the new cost basis, tax-free, and wire the money to her. If she wants the Bitcoin, she'll give us a wallet address, or we'll help her set up a new wallet, and we'll send the Bitcoin there. Again, new cost basis. So all the complication of how to pass on your Bitcoin is removed when it's in life insurance, and it definitely takes a lot of the fear of, now that you're owning Bitcoin, what do you do with it? How do you hold it for the long term? Happy to take any questions. You could scan that if you want to get in touch with me. I'll be around all day. Over there.
You described a scenario for a healthy young male. How about the aging boomer scenario with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes?
Good question. We are a life insurance company, and we want to insure healthy individuals, younger the better. We insure people between 18 and 65. However, you can always own a policy on someone else. Remember, there are 3 parties to every life insurance contract. You have the owner, you have the insured, and the beneficiary. The owner can be a trust, it can be an entity, it can be an individual. The owner is responsible for paying the premium, but they also have access to the tax-free policy loans. Then you have the insured, 18 to 65. The younger and healthier you are, the bigger the death benefit. An 18-year-old female, 10 Bitcoin in premium, 26 in death benefit. A 60-year-old male, 10 Bitcoin in premium might be 11 in death benefit. Then you have the beneficiaries, individual, group of individuals, all your kids in equal splits, a trust, a charity, up to you. The beneficiary files a claim when the insured passes away. So we have a lot of boomers that are older than 65. They own policies on a child or a nephew or a niece, someone they have insurable interest with, and are able to spend their Bitcoin into their retirement through the form of the policy loans, the tax-free policy loans, and then transfer ownership in their estate and their will of the policy to someone else in their family upon the death of the owner. So you might get a policy on a child. It's not about the death benefit when you do that. It's about the tax-free policy loans. Anyone else?
So the Bitcoin that I would put into a policy, that's not a taxable event to me.
I don't give tax advice, but I'll tell you this. There are a lot of precedents that say that it might not be, it might be, it's really up to you. We don't issue Form 1099s or any type of tax form upon paying your premium. Because everything's in Bitcoin, we never sell Bitcoin. Think of it this way. If you get a new custody account at Coinbase, you move your Bitcoin into Coinbase, that's not a taxable event. You want to cancel your policy, your custody account, move it to somewhere else, not a taxable event. It's like taking $100 out of your left pocket, putting it in your right pocket, not taxable. There's also Bitcoin share class hedge funds. You can invest in Bitcoin in kind, and that's not a taxable event. And you can cancel your policy and get your Bitcoin back. And so while we're not giving tax advice, and I'm not telling you yes or no, there is no clear guidance from the IRS whether paying your premium in Bitcoin-denominated life insurance is a taxable event. We're the only company that does it. But ultimately, I can say that I have my own policy. I spoke to my CPA and got many opinions, and most people agree that I've spoken to and others have spoken to that it's probably not a taxable event. Anyone else? Yep. It's a non-MEC. A MEC, he asked if it's a MEC, which is a modified endowment contract. What that means is because we're paying your premium over 10 years, to be a non-MEC, a taxable event when you borrow your Bitcoin and get the stepped-up basis in policy loans, have it be tax-free. This is a non-MEC, a non-modified endowment contract, which means that it meets certain principles outlined by the IRS to allow you to borrow against your policy without triggering any taxable events. A MEC is established at the 7-year threshold. You have to pay your premiums over at least 7 years. Basically, what happened in the 1970s in America was wealthy people would get PPL, private placement life insurance, and put their yachts and mansions in a policy, and then on day 1 or day 2, borrow up to 90% of the surrender value of their yacht and mansion completely tax-free. The IRS realized that that's a huge loophole. They plugged it in the 70s. They created this thing called a modified endowment contract, which meant you have to pay your premiums over 7 years and have your surrender value slowly grow over time, and then you can borrow against the surrender value, not the full value upfront of your assets. So if you put 50 Bitcoin into a policy and then borrowed 90% of it tomorrow, tax-free, that does not work in America. And so the premiums are paid over 10 years in equal annual installments. There's no paid-up additions. If you want to get another policy in the future, you can always get a second or third or fourth policy.
How would you use this as a key man policy for a boomer?
Say it again?
How can you use this as a key man policy for a boomer?
You mean to say that you're getting a policy, like a business would get a policy
for like a business owner where
Yeah.
the other investors want to be protected?
So we are working with companies. There's something called COLI or BOLI, corporate-owned life insurance, business-owned life insurance, where you can, as a business, get policies on certain key personnel, C-suite of a company. And we're starting to work in that arena as well. So a business can own key man policies on certain individuals, but there has to be rules, like you can't all be on the same airplane at the same time, things along those lines. But I'm happy to talk in more detail after this.
All right, let's give Jason a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Jason, and meanwhile, have a table in the other room, so if you want to talk to him, he'll be around all the rest of the afternoon. It is time for lunch. Lunch has been served out there for a while now, and we got about a half hour left. There should be plenty of time for those of us in the room. You can grab your lunch, you can bring it back in here and eat it, or you can sit out in the sun and eat it. But we'll get started back again about 1:05. 1:05 is our target start time.
We're now taking a scheduled 50-minute lunch break here at Bitcoin Day Naples. For our in-person guests, lunch is provided and available on-site. For those joining us on the live stream, please stay tuned. During this intermission, we'll be sharing a curated selection of special content from our event partners and sponsors, organizations helping build the real-world foundations of the Bitcoin ecosystem. The next panel will begin promptly after the break. Thank you for being part of Bitcoin Day. We'll be back shortly.
Everyone should be able to save and protect their wealth across generations. We built this company so billions of people around the world can take control of their financial lives. We've reimagined savings and protection from the ground up with digital money and modern technology. We're the world's first Bitcoin life insurer. For the first time, people can save, protect, and pass on their wealth entirely in Bitcoin. 4 years ago, we started working directly with individuals. Today, as the Bitcoin economy has grown, some of the world's largest and most conservative institutions are joining us in our vision. Every economy is built on patient, long-term capital. Bitcoin is the foundation of the next phase of global finance. We're not just building a Bitcoin company. Meanwhile is the backbone of how everyone will save in the future.
Meanwhile is building the world's first life insurance designed for a Bitcoin native world. Of course, owning Bitcoin starts with holding it correctly. Bitcoin Well exists to help individuals and institutions buy real Bitcoin directly into self-custody. Check it out.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
Bitcoin Well making self-custody look absolutely effortless. That is how it should be done. But now, let's get physical. Byte Federal is on deck. These guys aren't just building ATMs, they are building the actual bank of the future. Let's see what they've got.
You know, I just made my first Bitcoin investment.
Bitcoin? Really? Nothing beats the gold standard.
Some banks and even governments think it's better than the gold standard. You should get in while it's still cheap.
I'll pass. But I wish you the best of luck with that.
Well, it's been real. Check, please.
Come on.
Cash, card, or Bitcoin?
Don't be Brett. Go bank yourself with Byte Federal. Download our app today to get started.
Byte Federal is doing the heavy lifting, building the physical banks of the future. You love to see that infrastructure being built out in the real world. But now, let's talk strategy. How do we get this asset onto the corporate balance sheet? Tim Kotzman and Bitcoin Treasuries are leading the charge on corporate
experimenting with Bitcoin on their balance sheets. But the information is fragmented, noisy, and often wrong. Investors, executives, and allocators need clarity. That's what we do at Bitcoin Treasuries Media. Through our Bitcoin Treasuries podcast, in-depth research, companies, institutional capital, and the service providers shaping this new category. This is where corporate finance, capital markets, and Bitcoin collide. Visit Bitcoin Treasuries Media to explore the podcast, see upcoming events, and get plugged into the center of the Bitcoin Treasury ecosystem. We'll see you there.
Tim Kotzman, Matty Ice from the Cypherpunks podcast to give us the lowdown on the hash rate kings Blockware solutions. Take it away, Matty.
Why just hodl Bitcoin when you can help create it and provide security to the network? Welcome to the mining revolution, where Blockware makes turning your Bitcoin passion into mining power easier than ever before. With over 300,000 ASICs sold and 400 megawatts of hosting clients placed since 2016, that's like an entire city's worth of energy. Blockware has made mining accessible to everyone, not just tech wizards with warehouses. Here's the game changer: mining as a service. Purchase a live hosted miner in one of Blockware's US-based data centers across 5 different states. They handle all the setup, maintenance, and operations. You just stack sats. In just 3 simple steps: create an account on the marketplace, add a Bitcoin address for your payouts, and select your miner. That's it. From passive holder to network contributor in minutes. And with their comprehensive Learn Center, you can master Bitcoin mining at your own pace while your hardware is already earning. Join thousands of satisfied miners who've discovered that being part of Bitcoin's backbone is not just profitable, it's powerful. Start mining today, because in the Bitcoin revolution, the miners write the future. And if you have a moment, sign up for their newsletter. They have some of the best research in the mining space that I've ever seen personally, and I'm a weekly reader of their report that they put out. Now back to the show.
Massive shout out to the Blockware team. If you aren't mining, you're just waiting to be rugged. Get some hash rate. Now, once you mine those sats, how are you going to spend them? AirBTC is up next. Imagine Airbnb, but built by Bitcoiners. For Bitcoiners. No banks, no borders, just peer-to-peer stays. Let's see how they're fixing the rental market.
Investing your Bitcoin today means selling it or taking on high interest debt. What if you didn't have to choose?